Hi, I'm Scott Rogers, Director of the University of Miami School of Law's Mindfulness and Law program, and I'm delighted to have this opportunity to share with you a little bit about mindfulness and its relevance, why it matters to the legal profession, and in particular to legal education and to law students who are in the midst of the challenging and exciting and tumultuous and chaotic and invigorating and stimulating environment of law school. Just the recitation of those various qualities of the law school experience perhaps give a little bit of insight into some of what it is that mindfulness offers. And so what I'd like to do is just take a few moments to give you a sense of what mindfulness is, a little bit about the science of mindfulness, point in the direction of practice, but there's a great deal of material out there in terms of recordings, video, audio, and materials that you can read that can point you in the direction of practice. And ultimately, when all is said and done, I think that that's the most important aspect. So if in your law school environment you're able to come together and practice mindfulness, learn about mindfulness, talk about mindfulness, practice mindfulness, I think that's where the action is. That's where the real potential of what it is to be an engaged, a stimulated, an intellectually present and attentive and creative lawyer and law student reside. So first of all, what is mindfulness? Mindfulness is oftentimes referred to as paying attention in a particular way, to be able to notice what's arising in the present moment, right here, right now, whether that's referring to the sensations in the body, the thoughts in the mind, the feeling tone of what's coming along and taking grip perhaps, or something that we are experiencing, as well as that which is taking place around us, a more situationally oriented way of noting the people and the context in which we find ourselves, so that we are more informed, we have more information, we have more data to be able to make decisions, to act or to not act, as the case may be. And much of that, which we're good at as a general matter, that is to see what's going on around us, really moves to another level of being able to notice without doing anything, just because it's not exactly the way we would like it to be. Oftentimes we'll have thoughts or feelings or sensations within our interior landscape, and there's something agitating or uncomfortable, and we're so quick to do something to feel better, to eat this, to drink this, to yell at this person, to send this email. Mindfulness offers us the skill, the capacity to not be so quick to do something, because we're more experienced at being present with the discomfort or with the agitation. So too when things are taking place around us, things that people are saying, situations that are arising, information that we're receiving that can be jarring or alarming. And often, as you know from your own experience, we make these things into more than they are, and only after the fact realize that we overreacted, or we did something that we didn't have to do, or we got in the way of something that was taking care of itself. And again, it's that pause, it's that capacity to be present and hold steady in the midst of what seemingly is tumultuous and chaotic, and in fact may be tumultuous and chaotic. You know, as law students, you may know the but-for clause that you learn about in your first year and first semester of law school, and so we can think of mindfulness as offering us that but-for pause. But for this pause, which isn't a forced, like holding still in the midst of, but rather a more open and receptive and curious and engaged way of being, but for that pause that we can deliberately and intentionally bring into these moments, who knows what we might say or do, or even think that then leads to more saying and doing. And so this practice of mindfulness, this paying attention to what's taking place within us, around us, in a way that's a little steadier, can have a great deal of benefits that flow to us in ways that are practical, as well as in a larger sense of our well-being. So mindfulness has been found to be associated with changes to the structure and function of our brain in areas associated with focus and concentration, particularly in the middle prefrontal regions, associated with less emotional reactivity, for example, in the part of the brain called the amygdala and the limbic system, which is very much connected to the fear activation in the midst of alarm and concern, that there's less activation of the amygdala and maybe even a thinning of this part of the brain as a result of mindfulness practice. And so we know and find that our attention is enhanced, that we are better able to focus and keep our mind trained on the task at hand, whether it's a person or something that we're reading, or even our own thought process, that we are more skilled at noticing when our mind wanders, and we live in a very easily distracted and distractible world, and bringing our attention back. That's its own extraordinary skill that mindfulness very much can help us become more adept at. And then with that, if we're able to train our attention and keep our attention trained, or to return our attention, not surprisingly, we're less likely to become emotionally reactive and engaged, because we're less likely to go into and anticipate and imagine scenarios or have stories and conversations in our mind that aren't particularly helpful, because we noticed it happening earlier and we bring our attention back to the present moment, to what's actually taking place. Sharon Salzberg, a wonderful mindfulness teacher, talks about mindfulness as being able to tell the difference between what's happening and the story we have about what's happening. And so mindfulness has been to be very helpful with, as a result of these meaningful changes that can take place to anxiety and toning down anxiety, to our mood and to depression, to the ways in which we might otherwise find ourselves getting sicker than we might need to because of the stresses. And so immune functioning is found to be affected by mindfulness practice, and a whole host of medical situations like inflammation that can arise, that can also interfere with our health and our well-being. The list of health benefits goes on quite a ways, and the list of emotional benefits goes on quite a ways, and also in terms of our relationships with others. And so there's much that you can read about that. I want you just to be aware that those are some of the important findings, especially important in the practice of law, where there is a great deal of anxiety, there is a great deal of mood fluctuations and depression, there is a great deal of a very agitated, anxious way of being. And ironically, the part of us that perhaps has gone into the law because we are attentive to detail, because we have a perfectionist quality, because we care very much and we carry things in our mind and we're good at noticing discrepancies and mistakes and errors that serve us so well and please our clients, because we catch problems and we anticipate things, that there's a time for that, and a time for that capacity to really play itself out. But then there's a time for it to take the back seat, and we have difficulty making that shift. And so we can go into overdrive in this way of being very effective at times when it actually gets in the way of our effectiveness and our well-being. So I'd like to close with just a little bit on the practice itself. Traditional mindfulness practice would be placing our attention on an object, like the breath, but it could be anything. It could be the person that you're speaking with, it could be the book and the passage that you're reading. You're placing your attention on an object with the intention to keep your attention on that object, to notice, to observe, and when your mind wanders, to bring your attention back. And to do that over and over and over. And so there are many different mindfulness practice and connection, compassion practices that relate to it. They all in many ways fall together and relate to one another. And so you'll learn perhaps many of these and practice many of these or some of these and find those that resonate more with you perhaps than others. But this, placing our attention on an object like the breath, so be aware of this breath that you're taking now. To rest our attention there, and when our mind wanders, to gently bring our attention back That is a very important mindfulness practice. And if you practice that, I think you will find in short order the ways in which we change, and ways in which we can benefit from the doing of that, and the more attentive, concentrated mind, the less wandering and distractible and distracted mind, and the emotional, regulatory skillfulness that flows as a result. And in closing, I'd like to say that this is a wonderful conversation that is happening. I'm delighted to be sharing this information with you. There are faculty around the country at law schools that are bringing mindfulness to the community of students and faculty and staff and administration in ways that now more than ever matter a great deal. Students are sharing mindfulness with each other by forming groups. Schools are creating opportunities for students to come together in terms of student organizations. Faculty are bringing mindfulness into the classroom in traditional doctrinal areas, as well as classes that are very much about mindfulness or integrating mindfulness into the curriculum, marrying it up with decision making or negotiation or trial practice or whatever the case may be. And this is a very exciting time, and so that you are coming together, that you are interested in learning more about this, and most importantly, that you are engaged in the prospect of practicing mindfulness within the law school environment, which will help support others in their interest in doing that. And their doing of that is really extraordinary. So I applaud you for having the interest that you have and for making the movement in this area and in this domain of intellectual engagement and experiential practice and physical and emotional well-being that you are.